All right, Ryan, let's talk about Jaire Alexander, excuse me, just released by the Green Bay Packers. And the issue with Jaire is not on the field; it's the fact that he can't stay on the field. He's battled injuries the last few years. I think he's played 7 games in each 24 and 23 seasons, and he is now free to sell his wares wherever. And I'll ask you this: when he's healthy, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, what makes the most sense for him in terms of his next landing spot? One thing else to keep in mind, week 18, I believe, the 2023 season, he was suspended 1 game for contract conduct detrimental, or whatever they wanted to call it. I think he was rubbing some people the wrong way in the organization. But in general, there's a lot to like about him. Where do you think it makes the most sense for him in terms of landing spots?
I think the number one spot for me right now would be the Saints because you have a young Kool-Aid McKinstry that's starting there, and I'm pretty sure Lante Taylor is the other corner that'll be penciled in there. So that makes the most sense now, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a second when we mention Jalen Ramsey. The advantage that Jaire has is that he's free to negotiate now. And for Jalen Ramsey, it's about finding a home, finding a package deal that both teams can, agree to. So I think, like you said, Jaire is talented. I think we all know that. However, the big issue for Jaire has been, the health, and then you add in some of the personality stuff. You mentioned, the 1 game suspension. This guy made himself a team captain for a game just because he just went out there. But that just shows you, his personality. And you can watch some of his interviews and you can hear, the quirkiness to him. But, man, when he's on the field and he's healthy, he's one of the better corners in the league. So he just has to, figure that part out. But I think from a just standpoint of a team that needs a corner the most, I think New Orleans Saints would be a team there.
Yeah, they're a young team that certainly has quarterback situations as well, but they do have some needs in the secondary. One of the teams I came up with, and this segues nicely into our next talking point here. What about the Miami Dolphins? Because obviously Jalen Ramsey, it feels like he's played his last snap for the Dolphins. With Jaire, who's a different type player, he's not as big or as physical as Jalen is. Would he make sense there? Because they still have needs in the secondary. Those needs are about to get bigger if Jalen Ramsey ends up elsewhere.
No, I agree, and I think he does fit, and I think I'm just judging from a personality standpoint. I think has the type of personality that I think Mike McDaniel's can work with. Now, here's the trick. Here's the trick. If you're saying Jaire Alexander to Miami, who is Green Bay's head coach? Matt LaFleur. Mm-hmm. Who's the defensive coordinator? Jeff Hafley. McDaniels worked with both of those guys at different stops. And so I'm pretty sure if they were having that conversation, Miami could get a little bit more intel than most when it comes to what's it like managing Jaire on a day-to-day basis. So if you see that move happen, then you know that on some level, Matt LaFleur and Jeff Hafley signed off on Jaire.
I don't know. Do you have a relationship with Mike LaFleur? Do you know him from your time travels?
Yeah. I know both of the LaFleur brothers work with Jeff Hafley in San Francisco as well. So that's the crew. That's the crew. That's a part of that Shanahan tree. Right. They've all worked, from under there, and there's no bigger disciple of the Shanahan tree than Mike McDaniel. So again, from a personality standpoint, I think it fits. And if I could go back when I'm talking about Jaire to the Saints, like the Saints would be a good fit because you still have Tyrann Mathieu there, who's the bona fide leader of that room. And I don't think anybody's going to come in and disrupt that, or Tyrann. I don't believe he'll allow that to happen. So it could be a good one-year landing spot for Jaire to come in, get himself together, prove that he could be a good teammate and, play within a structure, and then maybe hit it big after that.
And by the way, Honey Badger is a great example of someone who coming out had some off-field issues he had to concern himself with, has been a model citizen and player, played at an extremely high level since arriving in the NFL. So just because you make a mistake and name yourself team captain, for example, that doesn't mean your career has to be over. It's just something you learn from. So I think that's a good fit, as you note there. All right, let's talk about Jalen Ramsey, currently on the roster in Miami. And if you missed it, we talked to GM Les Snead of the Rams, and that's on the podcast. We did that on Monday. He acquired Jalen Ramsey when they won the Super Bowl. And there's a chance he ends up back in L.A. I have a list of landing spots here, Rand, but I'll let you start with your favorite landing spot for Jalen Ramsey should he end up leaving the Dolphins.
Well, I'll say this much. If you're Jalen, the money part, I'm not going to speak for him from a financial standpoint, but I would say on the surface, the money part shouldn't be an issue. I'm looking at what does Jalen want at this point, right? Like, do you want to win a championship? Like, what is Jalen's goals? What's left for Jalen, to accomplish? And I just look at a team that gives him the best opportunity to do that. And I would say either Detroit or I would say back to the Rams. And again, I could easily, drop him in that bucket to the Saints as well. But do the Saints have enough to win right now? And if that's what's important to Jalen. So I would just say Detroit and the Rams if he's looking to truly go out on top and win the championship.
Yeah, two other sneaky teams, actually three other sneaky teams that I sort of like in the AFC. The Ravens don't necessarily need a lot of depth, but having Ramsey there as not a part-time player, but a guy who doesn't have to play every single snap, that's intriguing to me. The Bengals desperately need help everywhere in defense, so that makes some sense. But then you're sort of putting yourself behind the Ravens in that division because it's just Joe Burrow in that offense right now. And then what do you think about this, Rand, before we take a break here? What about the Chiefs?
Yeah. Now here's what I'll say with the Chiefs, because I haven't looked at their cap situation. Can they fit all of that under? Yeah. Will that require Jalen Ramsey to restructure? Now, here's what I'll say about the Cincinnati one, and I know we got to take a break. Jalen Ramsey's agent is David Mulugheta. And David was representing T. Higgins in the deal to Cincinnati, at that time. So what is that relationship like? Because that's going to, have a, conversation between the Bengals and Jalen's representation. So we don't know what that relationship is going to look like, because if you're seeking a trade, there comes a point where your team allows you and your agent to reach out to other teams. And, I don't know where, David's relationship is with the Bengals organization, and would he be willing to reach out to that organization to get something done?
That's a good point. No, that's right. That's a good point, because, as professional as agents and teams are, I'm sure sometimes there's some animosity when you're doing a deal that takes a while to get done on either side or maybe both sides. You can check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast. Scan that QR code to check out Carthon's Corner. We're going to do it all month long.